This is a replacement battery for Ego Power Tools. It claims to be 5.3 amp hours. That's a lie. It's made out of a 4 amp hour battery internally. And it does work pretty well with most, but not all, of my Ego equipment. So it has worked with all the power tools I've tried it with, including my lawnmower. It's being charged by both my slow and fast chargers, the old style slow and fast chargers. And it's worked okay with the old 150 watt square wave power inverter. Now, most notably, it did not work with the new fancy PAD 5000 400 watt sine wave power inverter, or with my Ego Nexus Power Station. So this battery appears to have an incompatible BMS with the products that require direct access to the BMS to do, battery management, so the power stations specifically. I have had it work with lights and all of my power tools. So if you're looking for a replacement Ego battery that will, run your power tools and be able to be charged on your old style chargers, it may work with the new style chargers, but it's also possible the new style chargers are like the power station where they interact with the BMS more. So it's a reasonable price point for a 4 amp hour battery. It's cheaper than the Ego 4 amp hour battery. So the cells inside look like pretty standard 18650 cells. So I don't know if they're going to have the longevity of the Ego cells or not. But they're they look like generic 18650 cells. So they're probably pretty good for at least a 2-year period. And the BMS inside does have a sense wire connecting between every cell. It has 2 temperature probes, so it looks like the BMS certainly has all the parts necessary to protect against your standard overcurrent, under voltage, over voltage type situations. So it looks like it has a legitimate BMS in there, even if the communications with the Nexus Power Station products made it not work with them. So construction-wise, it's hard plastic. It's put together very much like the Ego batteries. The only difference is you don't have the over-molded rubber kind of bumper fall protection on this battery. This is a compatible battery for Ego lawn equipment, and this is specifically the 5.3 amp hour version. I was sent this battery to review for free. If you wanted to purchase it, it would cost you about $90. They haven't paid me for this review, and my opinion remains my own. Alright, so in the package, we get a little card with a user's guide, and it says, use only charger specified by the manufacturer. When battery pack is not in use, keep away from other metal objects. Shorting the battery terminals may result in burns or fire. Do not open the battery. Make sure the power switch is in the off position before inserting the battery pack. Battery can only be recharged, temperature range of 5 to 40 centigrade. So nothing but common sense items in the user guide here. Okay, so this battery weighs 1.9 kilograms or 4.2 pounds. Now an Ego 5 amp hour battery weighs 5.0 pounds. So this guy here is lighter weight than a comparable 5 amp hour Ego battery by about 0.8 pounds. Shape-wise, it looks a lot like an Ego battery. It has kind of a serial number. It looks like laser engraved in there. It has at the top here a push button, and it looks like from the factory it comes with 1, 2, 3, 4 out of these 5 lights lighting up, so that's your battery indicator there. And it says 56 volts, 5.3 amp hours, 296 watt hours. So the claimed watt hour capacity of this 5 amp hour battery is 296 watt hours. All right, so let's test this in some Ego equipment. All right, I've put this in my Ego fast charger, and the Ego fast charger is turned on and is charging it. Now, the Ego fast charger says it's working between 25 and 50%. We have some lights on the top of the battery flashing and so forth. Now the fast charger says it's going up to 75%. So it looks like it was mostly charged from the factory, kind of like the lights indicated, but it is being charged properly by the fast charger. Alright, I've plugged this guy into my Ego regular charger, and it is charging it successfully. So this battery can be charged by either the Ego slow charger or the Ego fast charger. Trying it out in my leaf blower. I'm going to hit turbo mode. Alright, so it definitely is powering the leaf blower, no problems. Now these lights, the power lights, they started at 4, but they went down to 2 when I was drawing power from it, which is kind of expected with the voltage sag. Okay, Ego string trimmer. Works fine. Alright, Ego hedge trimmer. Appears to be working fine. Okay, this is the Ego power head. Works fine. Okay, this is the Ego LT1000 portable area light. And it is working with the portable area light. I can change which lights are on and off. I can hit boost mode. So it does work with the portable area light. This is my Ego Pad 1500, which is a 150 watt square wave inverter. So I'm going to push the button on this guy. Now it turned, I heard a pop there, I'm not sure what that pop was. So the light turned green, and it is powering that successfully. So the inverter is producing power and AC power coming out. So it does work with the small Ego square wave inverter. I'm going to try it with the PAD 5000, which is their 400 watt inverter. Now I'm still getting that flashing red and green on this inverter, so it is not working properly with their pure sine wave 400 watt inverter. So don't buy this battery to use with this inverter. Alright, this is the Ego Nexus Power Station. It turned on with the battery. It says press and hold the reset button. It may not be working with the battery. Let me put an Ego battery in. Alright, I have one Ego battery, one replacement battery. And it recognizes the Ego battery. It is not recognizing the replacement battery. So that battery does not recognize or work with the Nexus Power Station. It's a big question in everyone's mind. What about the lawnmowers? So this is one of the newer 21-inch select cut mowers. It's a model number of LM2130SP. Okay, it's winter here, so I didn't really need to mow much, but I did a square around the Christmas lights and this cable here. And this battery I haven't charged yet. This is just, you know, out of the box from the factory. So it runs the mower just fine. Self-propel works great. Now, it's harder to see. There's one flashing light in there. And it's harder to see that than the Ego default big red light. So it's not as easy to see how many lights you have left. But I've run it pretty low because we're down to one flashing light out of these 5. So I am going to just turn on my mower and let it run until it's completely used up. Boy, just running that lawnmower like a fan, this thing's been going. I was expecting it to be done by now since it was down to that last flashing light. Okay, this guy shut itself off. Alright, so this guy has a single light. It's not flashing now, so I've put it in my leaf blower. I'm going to run it in the leaf blower until that turns off. Now I just turned it on and it sounds like, yeah, it's winding down. The battery is getting so low it's shutting off and then it's turning on again. Alright, so I have an Ego battery charger hooked up to a watt meter, and we are going to charge this guy up and see how many watts it takes to charge it up. And I've been doing this with a lot of Ego batteries, so I'll know the equivalent charge level of various different types of OEM batteries. Alright, I have this guy charging an Ego fast charger with the watt hour meter, figuring out how many watts this thing's going to take when it's fully charged. Alright, so the fan noise is a little bit lower than usual, and even on my fast charger, this guy is charging at 157 watts. So it's not charging quite as fast as an Ego battery would charge on this charger. Okay, this guy's fully charged, and it took 210 watt hours to do so. Okay, so the battery claims to have 296 watt hours of capacity, but it only takes 210 watt hours to recharge it. So the actual capacity of the battery is going to be a little bit less than the power it takes to recharge due to charging efficiency losses. Now, I've owned many Ego batteries, and I have done this watt hour to recharge measurement on a lot of them. So for example, I have a 5 amp hour Ego battery, and maximum when it was about 2 years old was 270 to recharge it. Sometimes it'd be as low as 220 or 250. So what I can say is that this battery is in the neighborhood of a 2-year-old 5 amp hour Ego battery, but it's a little bit lower right now. So, 7 amp hour batteries, they're, when they're close to new, 410 watt hours to recharge a 7.5 amp hour battery. So I would say this guy's kind of in, I would guess, kind of the 4 amp hour equivalent to an Ego battery for capacity-wise measurements. Now, a brand new Ego battery, 4 amp hour, $159 right now, so that is $60 more than this battery, but it comes with a 3-year Ego warranty, assuming you buy it from an Ego authorized reseller. The full 5-section battery meter, and this guy will work with the Nexus Escape Power Stations. So this guy is $90, and that's a decent savings. You basically have about the same capability, at least brand new, as an Ego 4 amp hour battery. It runs most of those power tools. I mean, all the power tools I've tried it ran. It was just the power stations that didn't accept it. It charges with both of my chargers, and so if it actually had a lifespan as good as the Ego batteries, then that's a significant savings. Alright, so my best estimate comparing this to an OEM battery is I would compare this pretty directly to about a 4 amp hour battery from a capability standpoint. So this guy ran in all of the power tools I own. It charges on both of my chargers. The only thing it doesn't do is work with the power station accessories, most likely because the BMS inside of it doesn't quite talk the protocol that they're requiring to have full control over the battery state. So the price isn't 50% of a brand name battery, but it's definitely significantly cheaper than the brand name battery. So I think it really comes down to longevity. If this guy has the same longevity as an OEM battery, I think it would be a pretty good buy if you're using it to run power tools. Now, if you need it for a power station, obviously it just doesn't work in that. This battery has 5 screws on the bottom, 5 screws on the top, and then 4 screws down here. So an Ego battery only has 4 on the top and bottom. They're not a standard screw. They're not Phillips or flatheads. They appear to be a Torx 20 screw. That is different from the security bit that OEM Ego batteries use, but if you have a Torx 20 driver, you can pull them out pretty easily. Okay. So I've removed those 12 screws. Now, these plastic parts are just solid plastic. If you compare that to like an OEM Ego battery, they have some overmolded kind of black rubber bits as well. So you're missing that kind of black rubber kind of fall protection bits here. Now, on the plus side, that was a lot easier to pull off than the top of an Ego battery. And the bottom was a lot easier to pull off as well. So that disassembled very easily. And internally, it looks a lot like an Ego battery. We have the terminal block here, and then we have kind of the BMS board up here. Now, in an Ego battery, all of this would be covered with kind of gunky potting compound stuff, and here it's just kind of the circuit boards are just open. And so there you can see, you know, the cells. Now, these cells inside here say SunPower lithium-ion cell, 3.7 volts, INR 18650-2000. And I'm assuming the 2000 is milliamp hours on those cells. So each of these halves here have 14 of these cells. So there's a total of 28 cells. So it looks like they have a 2 parallel 14 series pack arrangement, which would mean that the pack is a 400 milliamp hour or 4 amp hour pack, according to these numbers on the batteries. Since I estimated it as being about 3.75 to 4 amp hour, that sounds very reasonable. So there is one thermal sensor right there glued to this cell in the bottom half, and another thermal sensor up there glued to this cell in the top half. All right, so if we count the wires that go from the battery, there's 6 there and 7 there, so that's 13 BMS sense wires. I'm assuming this black and red are the very bottom and very top of the battery, so there's the 15 wires for the BMS to sense the total voltage and the voltage of every cell. Plus there's the blue and kind of teal wire here, which probably go to the center 2 terminals for communications, and then there's the 2 sets of black wires that go to the thermal sensors. So it does appear that the BMS can balance and sense the entire pack.